afternoon. The image you see on the screen is a picture of my husband, Bill, and I with our little granddaughter, Quinny. And you can guess, we're in the Nerman Museum. Quinny is getting her first tour. Usually that is where you'll see me at the museum talking about the artwork made by other artists. But today, I have the pleasure of speaking about one of my own paintings. It hangs in the dining hall. It's called, I call it Bug Jar Number 1, and it's part of a larger group of paintings called the Garden Series. Before we talk about that painting, I think it would be interesting to know how I actually came to investigate the subject of nature. That means plants, insects, birds, bird nests, bird houses, everything you can think about in the garden or outdoors. So we're going to go back in time. About 20 years ago, in 2000, my husband, Bill, and I, a landscape painter, you just saw his landscape in the Rainier Center right there. Oh, you're doing good, Allison. He's a landscape painter, and he and I were invited to have a show at the Albrecht Kemper Museum in St. Joseph. We'd recently built a new large painting studio, so we got to work on the show. That show would hang for 3 months and have 40 paintings in the exhibition. It was installed in June of 2001 and ended the second week of September. It was truly an exciting summer, I will say. We ferried people back and forth from Kansas City. St. Joe liked the show a great deal. It got press. It was just really a delightful time for us. On September 10th, we picked up all the artwork, and the following morning, on September 11th, I was home cataloging paintings for sale deliveries and deliveries to our other galleries and to put into storage. I turned on the TV for a little bit of company about 9 o'clock, and you can probably guess what I saw. It was the historic event of 9/11, the day the towers came down in New York City. An exciting summer had turned into a really devastating fall. Eventually, all the artwork was delivered and stored, but I really didn't go back to the studio. I couldn't seem to paint, not for a very long time. The next months were spent in my gardens. I dug and planted and hauled, and fortuitously enough, I photographed everything. I took hundreds of photographs that fall. I also spent a lot of time walking at the Johnson County Arboretum, which is directly south of me, and Heritage Park, a large space with untold wildlife and unusual wildflowers. You've seen some photographs of my garden. I have about 1.5 acres and about 7 gardens. So there's a lot to keep me busy all the time. But when I finally returned to the studio in the depths of winter, I decided to totally change the focus of my work. For the previous 10 years, I painted exclusively photorealistic still life. I never painted another still life again. If I loved being outside in nature, why not make art about nature? I have a huge yard, many gardens, lots of inspiration everywhere. So I spent about a year experimenting, not only with images, but also with formal aspects too. Not just what I painted, but how I was going to paint in the future. I wanted to be more intuitive and more improvisational. I combined, and this is interesting because I combined different things. I combined my photographs of my garden and other places with field guides and even art historical illustrations from as far back as the 16th and 17th century. I combined all of that stuff together and made something distinctly personal that through that year developed in what I call the garden series. Now, there's another one. You saw a late one first. This went on for a long time. This little one is a very early painting that I had. The later one she showed with the black background is a much more mature one. And you can see down in front the things that I used along with my photographs for inspiration. Okay, now let's look at something in the context of the garden series, the bug jar paintings. The one you see is bug jar number 1, the very first one I made. Just a transparent jar on an abstract background. Artists never really work in a vacuum. They get inspiration from all over the place. And the inspiration for this jar came from seeing a wash drawing of a jar containing a small fairy, like a little boy with wings on it, not the Tinkerbell kind of fairy. And the minute I saw it, it was kind of like, that is it. In my mind, the painting was complete. My idea came so fast that I grabbed a discarded canvas on the floor and started slathering paint all over the surface, letting some of the color peek through. You can tell in the corner, you can see on a detail too. Some of this is all peek through paint, the yellow orange. While I was letting that dry, I searched all my research for interesting insects. And I actually searched my refrigerator for the perfect jar. Pickle jars worked best for me, it turned out. The background was thick and scumbled, but the insects were delicate and layered on top, one after another. Nothing was planned. The fairy in my bug jar was a beautiful moth. Over 10 years, I made many bug jars. I think the one you see is about 20 or 22 inches square. I made some as small as 12 inches square and some as tall as 6 feet. I even added resin to some bug jars to add another layer. You have the abstract layer, you have the detail layer, and now some of them, like the one behind me, if you can see that, can you get me? The one.
Yeah, they can see you.
Oh, okay. See, I don't know what they're looking at. The one you see behind me is a bug jar. It's the only one I own today out of maybe 25 that I did. This is on wood and it has a glossy layer in some areas, mostly the jar, of resin. I loved putting the resin on, but it's very heavy. So I couldn't use canvas like some of the other things you're seeing. I had to put it on wood. Recently, I asked 2 friends to tell me their impressions of the bug jars. One is another artist, Jane, who has owned a bug jar for about 15 years and sees in the painting a return to another time when we were growing up. She and I were growing up after World War II. Summers outside, bicycles, hot Oklahoma nights, thick with fireflies. You'll notice no iPhones, no computers. And back then there were hardly any television sets either. A simple time. Jane sees these paintings as a window into the past. Gwen, on the other hand, the granddaughter of another docent here, is 10 years old. She saw trapped nature, layers of color and texture, stages of insect development, spooky things looking beautiful behind glass. Stages of development, I got that one. Beautiful things behind glass, close-ups of things to look at, but not particularly wanting to touch. Quite literal and observant, as opposed to Jane, who let the paintings take her to another place in time. Both Jane and Gwen reflect part of my personal reasons for creating the bug jars. Like Jane, I grew up at the same time and the same identical town in Oklahoma. I share her memories, but I also wanted to create something exciting to look at. Paint, textures, color, bigger than life insects. You'll notice that many of these things, like the little mayfly, for instance, is a very tiny little thing, and you can see it up close. The bug jar makes for endless viewing, and I enjoyed every single one that I painted. Thank you for listening, and I'll for sure, oh, that's, excuse me, that's me when they installed it. I look a little bit different today, I think. If anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Susan, I'll just jump in real quick. Can you talk about the that underpainting that you were explaining to me the other day that you left exposed? Because that's kind of cool. At this
You
little
can
part
see some
right here.
Of that bug jar easily. I think it was sort of serendipitous that it happened. I wanted to do something fast. I had an old painting that had lots of bright color on it. And of course I put dark on top of it, mostly browns, blacks, you know, sometimes blues and tans. Very dark so that the things could come forward. The insects in the jar could come forward. But I liked that so much that later on I did underpaintings before I started the artwork. A lot of times they were in acrylic, which would dry really fast. And then I would have the ability to take a very large palette knife and scrape paint over the top and get some of the underneath, you know, color that was going on. It just added another layer, and I wanted that kind of effect, a layered effect.
And do you previously, before you started painting the bug jars, did you also paint on the edges of the canvas, or did that just start with the bug jars?
These canvases became very popular about 20 years ago, the boxed canvases. And at the time we did our show at the Albrecht Kemper, most everything was framed, and my framing bill was horrendous. 40 paintings, I can't tell you what that bill was, and we even got a break in some areas. But I thought to myself, what's a good way to see? You can see things coming around the edge. What's a good way to eliminate a frame? And I thought, boxed canvases. Now you can buy some of these commercially, but Mike Otto made my bigger ones for me, and it was less than having something framed, even with a structure behind it. But that was the whole idea, no frame. And as a result, it added another way to look at things. I liked it that if you could walk in on a painting from the edge, you actually saw something before you were standing in front of the painting. And that started everything out. I might tell everyone that I've been at this. I'm sort of creeping toward 80, which is undaunting for me, but oh, there comes my dog. But I've been at this ever since I was probably about 12, 13, 14 years old. So all of my life as an artist has been something that has happened sequentially. One thing leads to another, and another. And today I don't hardly paint at all. I do other things in art, but I've always liked that transition feeling. You don't have to do the same thing all the time. I was a commercial artist for many, many years and always thought about being a painter, and didn't do that until I was 50 years old and went back to graduate school.